Biruchim Aba'im. We are going to. There's material on the. Yes, we have material there. The material is only missing the first two Pesukim. So there's going to be two verses that I read at the beginning, which you don't have, and then once we are all in the same place, I will thank you. What did you? Oh, no.
No.
Okay. He tried. Thank you.
Yeah,
Once we're all in the same place, we will then proceed forward. So give me one of the copies, young man.
Yeah, give it to
So I know where to as well. And I will tell you what we're doing. So here's the way the class is going to be tonight. I'm going to run through the material. The reason I want to run through the material is, as you know, we're going to start studying Gemara next week. And I do want to try to finish chapter 4. It's not going to be easy. We still have a long way to go. So I'm going to run through the material, less talking, more focused on the verses. And let me just plug you into the story. Nebuchadnezzar is now in his zenith. He is now an emperor. He feels very comfortable with his surroundings, with the people around him. That's it. He's not scared anymore. He conquered the different countries. One night he has a dream. It's really disturbing. We're gonna read the dream tonight, and you'll see why it's disturbing. He calls in the various dream interpreters and magicians and sorcerers and astrologers and soothsayers and so on. And he says, "Can you tell me what the dream is?" And he tells them the dream, and he says, "Well, I like the interpretation." And they're like, "No, we can't tell you the interpretation." And the reason they're not telling him the interpretation is because it's really nasty, right? It's a really nasty dream, and there's only one person left. Daniel, who is now the viceroy, Daniel, who in the past interpreted and saw things that nobody else was able to see. Daniel is summoned into the palace, or he comes into the palace for his regular meetings, and during the regular meetings, he discusses with the king the various affairs of state, but then comes a moment and the king says, "I want to discuss with you a dream I had." So you all have the material. As I said, when I copied the material, I skipped the first two verses mistakenly. So the first two verses I'm reading, I will explain, but then you will have it in your material. The Hezvereshi al Mishkevi says Nebuchadnezzar, "I saw this vision as I was lying down on my bed, Hazeh Havet, and I was literally able to see the dream clearly. Va'alu ilan, and behold, there was a great tree. Bero ar'a, this tree had roots that went deep into the earth. Verumehe sagi, and the height of the tree was enormous." And now you have the place. Look at the top of the page, Reva Ilana, okay? So you have that, Reva Ilana Woodkeef. And as I was looking at the tree, it was becoming wider, more powerful. Verumeim Te, and the height was going higher and higher, Lishmaya, till it finally reached the heavens. V'chazoteh, lesof kol ar'a, and the tree was so high that you were able to see it from any place you were on the planet. You were able to see this tree, and everybody was aware of its existence. Ofyehe shapir, the leaves were beautiful. So it wasn't just huge and powerful and enormous, but it had a certain artistic beauty to it. Ve'imbehe sagi, and the fruits of the tree were plentiful, not just plentiful in the number of fruits, but there was different species of fruit growing on the tree. So imagine the tree has apples, it has oranges, it has peaches. So I'm looking at this incredible, huge tree, beautiful, powerful, and many, many fruits growing from it. Umazon lechol labeh. And this tree was a source of food for everyone. Now you all know, or maybe you know, what Nebuchadnezzar is seeing in his dream. He's actually dreaming about his own kingdom, right? So he's witnessing in the dream the historical evolution of Babylonia, since he took place and he transformed Babylonia into a powerful world power. So he's seeing this in the dream. And in his dream, he sees how the tree grows up to the heaven. We're going to see in a moment why that is so important to understand the psychology of Nebuchadnezzar, but also to understand what takes place next. Umazon lechol habeh, and this tree was providing sustenance to the entire world. So it wasn't just about the tree, but the different life forms were relying on the tree for their particular lives. Tehotohi, under the tree, tatlel hevat bara. The animals of the field would go under the tree because the tree was protecting them, and the expanse of the branches was so wide that they would seek shelter under the branches of the tree. Ubanfohi yeduran sipore shemaya, and on top of the branches of the tree, there was all the different birds from different parts of the world were nesting their nests on the tree. Umineh yitezin kol bisra. And this tree served as an ecological unit that every life form depended on the ecology of the tree in one way or another for its own existence. Hazeh havet behezveh reshi al mishkevi. And I continued looking at this vision as if, although I couldn't tell the difference between whether I was awake or asleep, sometimes you think you woke up in a dream and you're looking and you're not sure, there's some confusion, but I see the vision clearly nevertheless. Va'alu ir v'kadish. Va'alu ir v'kadish. And then came into my vision an ir. Ir means a watchman. So sometimes the kingdoms, they have a watchman, like police officers, but not just police officers, people with a great authority who work for the king, and they're inspecting the city to see if anybody is misbehaving, right? More of a dictatorship type. So the watchman is there, the Kaddish, and together...
So, didn't you say we're dealing with the last chapter of that year?
No, we're dealing with the end of the life of Nebuchadnezzar. This is chapter 4. This is chapter 4 of Daniel. So there is a Kaddish, there is an angel. So there is, together with the watchman, who is not a friendly character, as you will soon find out, together with this watchman, there is a holy angel. Min Shemaya Nachit, and both of these persons, they descend from the heavens. Kareh Behail. And then out someone shouted an order. And shouting, he said the following: Godu ilana, chop down this tree. Bekasisu anfohi. And once the tree, when you have eventually you have timber and the tree falls down, he says, once the tree falls down, I want you to chop it up, chop off all the branches. Ataru ofyeh, take the leaves and throw them away. Ubadaru inbeh, and take the fruits and get rid of them. Says the watchman, I don't want any remnants of the tree, any memory of the tree's beauty, of the tree's power. I want everything disposed of. Tenud heveta, let the animals that were seeking shelter under the branches, let them run away, go somewhere else, min tahtoi, from where they are now, under the tree. Vesiparaya min anfohi, and let all the birds that were putting their nests on the branches of the tree, let these birds fly away and find another place to make their homes. Beram ikar shareshohi be'ashebuku. But I want after you cut down a tree, if you really want to destroy it, you can put stuff to, like poison, to destroy it so the roots don't form another tree. The watchman says, I want you to leave one of the roots in the ground, the main root, the center root, leave it on the ground. Meaning, I don't want it to be completely killed. I want you to chop it down, to destroy the power, to get rid of the beauty, but let that main root stay alive. Be'ar'a shebuku, and it will stay in the ground. Ube'esur difarzel unhash be'vit'a dibara, and you will chain this bark, this stump, right? The stump with the root, chain it with an iron and copper chain. Chain it to the grass of the chain it to the ground so that it cannot escape the ground. Ube'esur difarzel unhash be'vit'a dibara. On the grass of the ground, it's going to be chained. Ubtal shemaya istaba, and let this stump be exposed now to the dew that will fall every night. It will be exposed to the elements. Ve'im heveta halake ba'asab ar'a, and finally, this stump of wood, being alive but being in a very pathetic state, will be with the animals of the field and with the vegetation of the land. That's how it's going to end its life, in a very lowly state, in a very pathetic state. Libebe min anashai shanon. And finally, the heart of this life form, it's going to change, and it's no longer going to be human. So let me stop here for a moment and explain to you what is taking place. This vision that we are reading is a vision that is describing two things. Number one, it's describing the empire of Babylonia, how it will lose its power, how it will go down to the ground. It will no longer have the dominion that it had until now. That's with respect to the empire. But then there was something else. There was the person, Nebuchadnezzar. The person, Nebuchadnezzar himself, will undergo a transformation, right? There will be a metamorphosis in Nebuchadnezzar where somehow his mind will change. It will no longer be the mind of a regular person. The mind of Nebuchadnezzar will be replaced, and we're going to see what will replace what was once Nebuchadnezzar. Into what will he be changed? And finally, the human mind will be taken out of Nebuchadnezzar, and it will be replaced with the mind of an animal. And finally, there will be a period of time where 7 seasons will fall upon him. So he will go through every single one of the chambers of hell, Dante's Inferno, the different levels of Dante's Inferno. All of hell will descend upon this person. The tree symbolizing Nebuchadnezzar. This person will go through psychological hell. Bigzerat Irin Pitkama. This is the decree of the watchmen. This is the order of the Malachim, Umemar Kadishim She'eleta. This has been deliberated in the heavens what to do with Nebuchadnezzar. It has been deliberated in the heavens what to do with Babylonia. Everything that we are saying in this dream, don't forget Nebuchadnezzar is describing the dream to Daniel, right? Right now we're just describing the dream. Everything that we said in the dream, this vision, has been decreed from the Shamayim. And the reason is, Adibrat Diinde'un Hayaya, because we want all living people to know the following. And this is the reason Nebuchadnezzar is going to suffer like this. The Shalit ila'a b'malchut anasha. You think you're the president. You think you're the prime minister. You think you're the emperor. You think you run the world. And you do run the world, and you are given power, and you have power to do many things. But there's a limit. Now, where did the tree grow to? Until what point did the tree reach? We said, Shemaya, heaven. Now, what else in the Torah reached the heavens? There is, at the beginning of the Chumash, in the story of Noah, right after Noah, what happened? Migdal, Bavel, Verosho, Magia, Hashamayma. Where does this tree go? To the Shamayim. Okay. Let me explain to you what is happening. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, she'achol yad baro. Let me explain to you what is happening. There are people in this world who are given power. They have the power over other people. They have the power over nations, and their decisions make a difference for millions and millions and millions of people. And a person who has power, he begins to think of himself in a very arrogant manner where he looks down upon others. That's normal. But then there comes a point where some politicians, some kings, some monarchs, they get to a place where they begin to view themselves as gods. And the minute a person, be it an emperor, be it a monarch, be it a corrupt president, doesn't matter who, the minute a person begins to think of himself as God, that's now he is reaching Hashamayim. God now says, I'm going to chop down this tree. In the case of Migdal Bavel, it was Nimrod. Nimrod viewed himself as a god. He says, I'm going to save humanity. I'm going to build this great tower. We're going to put on the top of the tower. It's going to go up to the sky. We're going to put Avodah Zarah. And the Chachamim teach us that he wanted to build an Avodah Zarah, an idol, with the sword pointing towards God, in the sense that we don't need you. Stay out of our lives. We are ruling. I, Nimrod, am ruling the world, and these are my loyal subjects. You, God, Chas v'shalom, I'm repeating Nimrod now, what I'm saying. Chas v'shalom, you, God, are not welcome here. So that's the idea of the statue with the sword pointing towards heaven. Here, Nebuchadnezzar views himself as a great benefactor of humanity, as the one who protects people, who feeds people, and he saw himself as a god. And there is a rule, and the rule is as follows. The minute you begin to become too arrogant, God will bring you down, right? The Pasuk says, Ki to'avat Adonai kol gebah halev. A person who has a very high heart, this is despised by God. But in the case of a political leader, there will always be a price to pay. Now, Nebuchadnezzar is now going to pay that price. And what he's seeing in the dream is what's going to happen to him in the future. So he just described the dream to Daniel, and now we're going to see Daniel's reaction when he hears this dream. So let's continue.
So Pasuk 14 is still him talking?
Yes. Bigzerat irin pitkama. So he is hearing in his dream, he's hearing the angels and the watchman talking and saying, what's going to happen to this tree, it is all by the decree of the Almighty. This has been deliberated up in the Bet Din Shel Ma'ala. Right? There was a similar story in the book of Melachim, which I want to bring to your attention. The story is with Ahav, and Ahav, he murdered his neighbor, and he took away his vineyard, and he was very happy that he was able to do it. And the Pasuk says that after he did this, and it actually describes in detail, I think it's one of the only places in the Torah, one of the few places in the Torah, where you actually see the Bet Din Shel Ma'ala, the heavenly court, sitting down and deliberating, what do we do with this person, Ahab? And there's a discussion among the Malachim. The decree was a decree, right? But the question is, how do we bring about the decree? And there was a discussion among the Malachim what to do. This is what the Pasuk is saying. We discussed it up in the heavenly court. We know what you did, Nebuchadnezzar. You had power, you abused people. You think in your mind that you're God and you think everybody relies on you. Well, you stepped up you crossed a red line which you were not supposed to cross. You stepped up into the Shamayim. You're supposed to stay away from the Shamayim. King, one thing. God, under no circumstances. וממר קדישין שאלתה עד דיברת ינדעון חיייה דשליט אילאה. There is one God that rules the Malchut Anasha, that decides what happens in history. There is one God that actually rules humanity. Ulmandi isbe yitenina. God decides who he wants to put in power. If we have President Biden now, President of the United States, you like him, you don't like him. God put him in power. Why? That's a different story. Maybe not for our benefit, maybe yes for our benefit. That's the discussion I'm not going to get into. But the point is, when people attain power, Yamach Shemol, the Chancellor of Hitler of Germany, right? We're reading up at Ashad Zachor. He was a terrible, terrible human, not even a human being, subhuman. He got power, and look what he did with it. God put him into power. So things don't happen in history just by coincidence. But when these people become arrogant and they think that they control humanity, God chops them down. Ushval anashim yakim aleh, and God will take a person who was very lowly, who was very, not from the hierarchy, not from the nobility, and he will rise up this person, lift him up, and make the low person replace that arrogant person just to stick it to him, right? Like that's what happened with Ahashverosh. Ahashverosh, the Hachamim say, he was not from the nobility. Ahashverosh was actually not from the royal family. He was not supposed to be king. Vashti, who was a great-granddaughter, by the way, of Nebuchadnezzar, she was of royal descent, and that's why she disrespected Ahashverosh. She viewed him as a, unworthy of the kingdom. So that's a great example of Shval Anashim, taking a person who is lowly and putting him in power in your place, right? Denach Hilma, Hazet, Anam Alkal.
A usurper.
Right. Denach Hilma Hazet. This is the dream that I saw. Anam Alkal Nebuchadnezzar, I, the king Nebuchadnezzar. Right? Very arrogant. The Ant Belteshazzar, and you, Mr. Belteshazzar, that was his Aramaic name, as you remember, Pishrei Emar. I want you now to give me the meaning of the dream. Now, there is a grammatical problem with the word Pishrei, and I'm going to ask, is anybody smart enough to see what is a grammatical problem with the word Pishrei? It says Pishrei Emar. What's wrong with that word? Ooh, very good. Look at the end of verse 16. Look at the very, very end of verse 16. It says Ufishrehe with an aleph, with a he. What's the difference between Fishrehe with a he and Fishreh with an aleph? Who knows the difference?
Compromise.
So first of all, the word Fishreh means give me the meaning of the interpret the dream for me, right? What's the difference? Why is he saying Pishreh with an aleph and not Pishreh with a he? Okay. Because the belief was that a good dream interpreter, if he hears a bad dream, he can offer an ingenious interpretation where he manipulates the material in the dream to create a good story and to provide the king with a pleasant and pleasing outcome. He doesn't say pishreh. Pishreh means the interpretation, a peshara shela, right? He doesn't say pishreh. He says pishreh with an aleph. What does pishreh mean? Give me an interpretation. Meaning he's telling Daniel, I don't need you to give me the real interpretation. I actually don't want you to give me the real interpretation. The dream is clearly horrifying. I want you to give me an interpretation, meaning, you get paid, you're the chief dream interpreter, right? Please, now's the time, right? So the Ant Belteshazzar Pishreh with an aleph, Emar, tell me, Kol Kebel, Tikol Hakimeh Malchuti, La Yachelin Pishra Lehoda Utani. Because none of the other dream interpreters in the kingdom were able to give me an interpretation, the Ant Kahel, but I know you can do it. And the reason you can give me a good interpretation is Diruach Elahin Kadishin Bach, because you have within you the spirits of the gods. Now again, he's a polytheistic person. He says spirits of the god. Of course, we don't believe in spirits of the gods in plural, right? But that's the way Nebuchadnezzar, he can't break free from his polytheistic background. That's the way he views Daniel. So he says, the spirits of the gods speak within you. Edayin, Daniel, at this moment, Daniel, Dishemeh Belteshazzar, whose real name, whose Aramaic name was Belteshazzar Eshtomam. He looked despondent. Kesha'achada. For a little while, he was standing there with a despondent look on his face. Berayonohi yeba haluneh. And it was obvious that he was very disturbed by his thoughts. He was going in his mind, and his thoughts were bothering him. The king saw this. Anem al-Ka ve'amar. The king, looking at Daniel, understanding that Daniel is scared, he says, Belteshazzar, Chelma ufishre al yebaha lach. My page is a little erased. Chelma ufishre al yebaha lach. Let not the dream, let not the interpretation of the dream scare you. Just, let's get with it. He's very arrogant. He feels very confident. Aneh Belteshazzar ve'amar. Finally, Daniel opens up his mouth and he says, Mari, hilma lesaneach. Sir, my Lord, may this dream be given to your enemies. Lesaneach. Ufishrehe le'arach. And may the interpretation of the dream happen to those who want to destroy you. Meaning Daniel is warning him, it ain't going to be good. Ilana, Yechazaita, the tree that you saw, Direba, that was huge, utkif, and powerful, Verumeim telishmaya, and you saw the top of the tree reaching the heavens, V'chazoteh lechol arach, and you were able to see the tree from all over the world. It was so tall. The ofyeh shapir, beautiful leaves. The inbeh sagi, and the fruits were plentiful. Umazon lechol habeh, and this tree was giving sustenance to all life forms. Tehotoi tedur chevat bara, under the tree were the animals of the field seeking shelter. Ubanfo yishkenan sipporeh shemaya, and in the branches of the tree were the birds. Antu malka, you are that tree. Direbat, you became powerful. Ut, who sees the word? It's just a little erased here. One moment. Ut.
Clear, maybe?
No, I haven't. No, it's fine.
Okay.
I was looking at this thing.
Oh.
But I just take this.
Yeah.
I just realized I have the book here.
Here.
All right. What pasuk are we on? 19. Thank you. Okay. Utkeft. You became, direvat means you were given dominion. Utkeft, and you were given power. Urbutach, revat, and you became more and more powerful because you conquered more and more provinces and more countries. Umtat lishmaya, and you finally aimed towards the heaven. You began to view yourself as a deity. You remember last week I told you about the emperor of Japan during World War II. We thought he was a god. That's why the Japanese wouldn't surrender until finally they had 2 atom bombs on Japan. So many emperors, they view themselves in this, they deify themselves. And I gave you many examples in last week's class. It's on YouTube now, so I'm not going to repeat it. And your dominion spread out to the extremities of the world. Malka, and this that you saw, a watchman and an angel saying, the Amar Godu Ilana, that order, chop down the tree, the Habeluhi, and destroy the tree. Beram Ikar Shoshoy Barashebuku, but leave the roots in the ground alive. My father once taught this chapter many years ago, decades ago actually, and I remember he said, "Why leave the tree alive? Why not destroy the roots? Poison the roots and kill it?" And my father said that something I think very deep, because you see, Nebuchadnezzar, he was a barbaric, sick, sadistic emperor. And you remember that when in the beginning of the story of Nebuchadnezzar, when the dream interpreters couldn't interpret the dream, he began to kill them, and it says, Hadamitit Abedun, and I explained that the way the death was done is they would cut them up, right? This was, by the way, very common in the Chinese dynasties. It was called death by 1,000 cuts, right? So Nebuchadnezzar apparently practiced that death by 1,000 cuts. And he was a very cruel person. So why not just kill him? So my father said that psychological pain is the worst type of pain. Meaning, had you killed him, you would actually be doing him a favor because you wouldn't suffer enough. So by letting the tree stay alive and experience everything that is happening, you're causing this person, Nebuchadnezzar, as it were, a terrible pain that he would not be able to experience if he was just killed, right? So that's why the roots are allowed to stay alive. Let chain the trunk to the grass of the field, because otherwise it would grow up again, right? We don't want it to grow up, so you're putting the chain on the trunk, symbolizing we cut you down, you're not going to come back into power. Your power will stay to the ground. You will never again become an emperor, right? Uptal Shemaya Yistabah, you will be exposed to the dew of the heavens. You will be living with the animals of the field. Ad until the 7 seasons of hell will pass upon you. And then you will be able to die, right? Dena Fishra Malka. That is the interpretation, Your Majesty, meaning this will literally take place to you. There is a dream which you are dreaming about yourself is quite literally what will happen to you because of what you did to other people, because of the suffering you brought about upon humanity, and finally because of you deciding to reach the heaven, right? There is a model in history: if a king reaches heaven and he thinks he's God, the guardians of heaven will come down and show him that he is not God. Well, my father once said also that he believes this is why Jesus was killed in a brutal way. He was killed in a brutal way because he let people believe that he was God. People believed that he was a deity. The reason they believed he was a deity is because he let them believe that he was a deity. He let them believe that he was somehow the son of God and all that. And as we said, this rule says, don't pretend to be God. Not a good thing to do. You pretend to be God, God will send down the angels and they will chop you down, and you will be obviously a pathetic human being. This is what happened to Yamach Shemo, again, the Chancellor of Germany, Hitler, when he was burnt alive. Horrible, horrible death, right? This happens to many dictators when they suffer terrible deaths. I know Stalin, the guy was a sick person. He constantly thought people want to kill him. He was in constant fear. He was killing everybody around him because he was terrified that they're going to kill him. By the way, I think there's precedent for that. President Xi of China today, I think Putin also as well. He's always scared of being killed. So we see this rule: dictators become psychologically sick, and rather than killing them, God lets them live so that they suffer the fear of being killed themselves. Right? Let's continue. Velach taredin min anasha. Says Daniel, now this is Daniel speaking to Nebuchadnezzar, there will come a time where you will no longer be able to live with people. And you will actually live with the animals. Again, this isn't allegorical, but this is actually what happened to him. And you will begin to enjoy the taste of grass. You will be outside in the field, and like ox, like they eat the grass and they eat the vegetation, you will begin to enjoy eating animal food. Why an ox? Because an ox is an herbivore. And it's at the bottom of the food chain, right? The ox are hunted by carnivores. So it's saying not only will you become an animal, but you will become a hunted animal. Umital shemaya lach misabein, and you will reach a point where you're going to stay, you're not going to seek shelter. Normally human beings, when it's raining or there's dew and it's wet outside, you seek shelter because you don't want the dew to fall on you, you don't want to get wet. You are going to be in a situation where it will become natural for you to be exposed to the elements, to be exposed to the dew. V'shiv'a idanin yahlefun alach, and you will go through the 7 chambers of hell. Aditinda. And this is so that you learn the lesson that you are not God and you don't really govern humanity. Says God, I govern humanity. You know, I said this a few weeks ago and I'm going to say it again. Ulmandi is 29. God will decide. God will decide who is supposed to be ruling and who will not be ruling. I want to take just a small example. So right now humanity is in a pretty, just from a historical perspective, you get a sense that the vector of humanity is not a positive vector in the sense that the likelihood of some sort of global stress, global conflict seems to be increasing. And we hope it doesn't, of course, we hope it doesn't. We pray to Hashem that there's peace. Now, this particular season, because of the war in Ukraine, between Russia and Ukraine. Anybody who was following the inside information as to the food supply in the world and the energy supply in the world would have known that this winter there was supposed to be the beginning of a famine in many parts of the world because the Ukraine produces a lot of the wheat in the world and because of the embargoes on Russia and the fact that a lot of the wheat production has slowed down, there was going to be a very serious situation in Europe, in Africa in terms of famine, in Europe in terms of energy because they no longer have the Russian energy. And it was a big concern. There was a big concern. What happened? Did our leaders become intelligent? No, they're the same leaders. What happened is that the average temperature in Europe was 20 to 30 degrees above normal. Right? 20 to 30 degrees above normal. That's why there was no major crisis in Europe where people were freezing to death. Right? They did not have enough oil or energy for a regular winter. Why was there not mass starvation? Because of the incredible warmth in the world now, 20 to 30 degrees above normal. By the way, global warming, it actually helps agriculture. I'm not getting into the debate of global warming and whether it's caused or not caused by carbon dioxide. I'm just stating an empirical fact. Agricultural production in the world is increased during periods of warming. In Europe, when there was an ice age, a mini ice age, people starved to death because agriculture doesn't grow in cold climates. So whatever your source of information is, I'm giving you some empirical facts. You can use that as a gauge to see what you're hearing in the news, whether it's correct or not. Now, 20 to 30 degrees above normal saved God knows how much suffering in humanity. God is ruling. Even when we have incompetent, imbecile leaders who really don't care. I mean, I don't know if they're imbeciles or they're evil. I don't think they care personally. Personally, I don't think that it bothers them if that would have happened. But God is ruling, and a miracle happened. And the miracle is the weather is the way. Even here in New York, well, I mean, it's ludicrous. It's like I'm calling my son in Ra'anana in Israel. It was like the same temperature as New York at the time. I mean, it's unbelievable, right? I don't know how long this is going to continue, by the way, but I know that this year a miracle happened in humanity. What's going to happen the next year? I don't know. Are we going to be worthy? Are we not going to be worthy? That's prophecy. But I can't analyze what actually happened. So here's a great example. If we have leaders in the world, they have a particular agenda, and for whatever reason, we see it 20 to 30 degrees above normal. Humanity was saved from these horrible, politicians and elite and World Economic Forum and all that other fun stuff. That's the message. Nebuchadnezzar, you were cruel to humanity. Enough is enough. I'm going to bring you down, and you're going to learn the lesson that you don't rule. I, God, am the ruler. Verse 23. V'di amaru lemishpa kikar share shohi de'ilana Shorshohi de ilana. And this that you heard, that they said, let the roots stay alive in the ground. Malchutach lach kayama. This means that Babylonia will continue to exist, but not like an empire. Min tinda de shalitin shemaya. Because you will know that those in heaven are ruling. Lahen malka milki ishbar alach. Now, Daniel did something he wasn't supposed to do. That was the dream. He interpreted the dream. So we had the dream, we had Daniel interpreting the dream, and now Daniel does something because I guess he felt a sense of compassion for Nebuchadnezzar. The Chachamim said that this was a mistake. He shouldn't have told Nebuchadnezzar what he's about to tell him, but he tells it to him anyway. Lahen malka milki ishbar alach. Let me give you an advice that could potentially save you from this. V'hatayach besidka feruk. You can redeem yourself from your sins by giving tzedakah. V'avayatach b'michan anayim. And you can undo some of your inequity by showing compassion upon the poor. And teheveh archa lishlevetach. And if you do this, there may be a possibility that your state of tranquility will continue. Daniel is trying to help Nebuchadnezzar not descend into the 7 chambers of hell. And he says, give tzedakah. Well, the truth, when we, in the Bet HaKnesset, when we ask people to give tzedakah on Rosh Hashanah Kippur, of course, the synagogue needs the money, and we're very appreciative for the great generosity there's always tremendous generosity. It's beautiful to see that. But the truth, it's also doing a favor to all the community, meaning there is no greater zechut to help us in the eyes of God than giving tzedakah. And now we have, for example, Purim coming up. Give tzedakah to the aniyim. It's a tremendous zechut. And it's such a great zechut that Daniel is saying, you, Mr. Sadistic butcher of Baghdad, you can save yourself by giving tzedakah. It's not too late. That tells you how powerful tzedakah is. All right? Let's continue. Kola meta al Nebuchadnezzar malka. It all happened. Everything happened. Meaning, he didn't take Daniel's advice. It was too difficult for him. He saw a poor person. He just couldn't. I can't do it. All right. He couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. And he continued being his arrogant self. Everything happened. He was waiting. And there was a belief that if you get a bad gezerah, if a person gets a bad dream or something of that nature, and 12 months pass, and nothing happens, it means the dream was just a dream. He had too much, Mexican taco. It was too spicy. He had a nightmare from the Mexican taco. Don't take it seriously. It wasn't a real dream. So what is he doing? He's waiting 12 months. He waited 12 months. It was the last day of the 12th month. The sun was about to set. And he was walking on a veranda, an outdoor terrace on one of his palaces, which was overlooking all of Babylon. It was beautiful. Ancient Babylonia was, by the way, one of the 7 wonders of the world, right? Beautiful. He says, look at this beautiful, incredible city. Diana benaita, I built this city. Levet malchu, and I built it for my kingdom. Bitkaf sihisni, this is my eternal strength. Velikar hadri, and the glory that I have. The sun is about to set, right? So he's like, that's it. He's relieved, and he says those words. Oh, mileta befu malka. He shouldn't have spoken. The words were still coming out of his mouth, and as the words are coming out of his mouth, and as the sun is about to set, but it didn't yet set. Kal min shemaya nefal. A voice descended from heaven. Lach Ameri Nebuchadnezzar Malka, you, Mr. King Nebuchadnezzar, Malchuta adat minah. We are now taking away your kingdom. Umin anasha lach taridin. You are going to be removed from the fellowship of man. You're not going to be able to stand their presence. But there's a famous story. Kafka, right? Kafka, he was a French Jew. He was one of the pioneers of Western literature. He wrote a book, Metamorphosis. Metamorphosis. Anybody read Metamorphosis by Kafka? Yeah. 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 So the book, it's a really weird book. It's a bizarre book. I think he got it from here. I actually do, because a lot of the theme, so the theme of the book, a regular person, a salesperson, he wakes up one morning and there's a complete metamorphosis in him. He turns into an insect. And at first his family tries to, live with him, but eventually they're so disgusted by him, and then he can't enjoy the fellowship of anybody, and he eventually dies, and everybody's just happy when he finally dies. Terrible story. But I think he got it from here. It's saying, Nebuchadnezzar, you're not going to be able to be with the fellowship of man anymore. You're going to be so repulsive, and you're not going to want their fellowship. They're not going to want your fellowship, right? So, you're going to be kicked out from the fellowship of man. You're going to be living happily with the animals. You're going to enjoy the taste of grass, because now you will be transformed physically, psychologically, mentally into an animal, and you will be eating grass. The 7 seasons of hell will fall upon you. Until you finally acknowledge till you acknowledge that there is one God who rules and has dominion over humanity. And whoever God wants to, He will give him to be the ruler. So you're just a messenger of God. The pasuk says, there's a pasuk that says that when God wants to, He enters the mind of the king and He presses the guy's buttons and He tells, you do this, you do this, you do that, you do that. The kings, they are actually just doing the bidding of God. Baha sha'ata milleta safat al Nebuchadnezzar. And at that moment, this gezerah, this terrible state of mind fell upon Nebuchadnezzar. Umin anasha terit. He couldn't stand to be with people anymore. He ran away from the palace. He ran away into the wilderness. Ve'isba chetorin yechul. And he began to eat vegetation from the ground. Umital shemaya gishmeh yistaba. And he was constantly wet with the dew of the heavens. Adi sa'areh kenishrin reba. And he became hairy. He began to look, eagle is filled with feathers, right? And they're prickly feathers. So his hair became so abundant on his body that he looked hideous. He began to look like an eagle. Betifrohi kesiporin, and his nails, they became curved. They became so long that they were curved, and he looked like the claws of these birds that they hunt. Right. So this is a metamorphosis that took place to Nebuchadnezzar, and it's a very beautiful metamorphosis. It's a very beautiful story, because you see these dictators. They're well dressed. They have a nice tie. They speak very well. And what it's teaching us is they're really animals. Don't look at the tie. Don't look that this guy had a nice suit, had a nice uniform, is well spoken. An animal is an animal, right? So these dictators that brutalize humanity, that do what they do, whether it's President Xi of China and all these other dictators, fortunately less in the Western world, but the point being, they still exist. These people are animals. And by turning Nebuchadnezzar into an animal, God is externalizing the real inner self of Nebuchadnezzar for all to see what he really is. And there came, after many years, I began to think, but I was an animal. Remember, this is a diary, this is the letter that I just want to remind you from last week's class. Remember, this is all written down in a letter that Nebuchadnezzar wanted to send to his kingdom. This is all the story that Nebuchadnezzar wrote in the letter, which Daniel took the letter and put it into the book of Daniel, right? Just reminding you that. So he's addressing the recipients of the letter. And then at the end of many years, doesn't say how much, we don't know, I begun to point my eyes, because you can imagine he's an animal, he's always looking at the ground, and he began to remember his human self, and he begins to think about the heavens. I put my eyes up towards heaven, and for a moment of illumination, I was able to think like a human. And at that moment of clarity, I begun to bless Hashem. And I begun to bring praises to the eternal God, and I began to glorify Him with my words. Shultan alam, because His dominion, unlike my dominion, God's dominion is eternal. And the kingdom of God is from one generation to the next. And the inhabitants of the earth are like nothing in the presence of God. Forget about Nebuchadnezzar. He's an emperor. He's a king. What are we at the end of the day? What is our lives? Meaning, what he's saying here is true. What is man? What is the individual? Our lives are fleeting like a breeze by the ocean, but that's it. The breeze ends, and right. God rules the earth, but whatever He wants to do in the enormous cosmos, He does. Whatever He wants to do on the planet Earth, He does. Nobody can tell God, why did you do this? I'm God. I'll do whatever I want. Why did you bring the Mabul? Why did you destroy man? That's what He wanted to do. You can't do anything about it. You have no say in the matter. That's all. Right? Right? As I was singing these praises to God during that moment of illumination, at that moment, I became cured. My mind returned. And I was able to go back into the palace. And my friends and my colleagues, the other political leaders, they came back to me. And I was put down back on the throne, and I became once more, I got some power. It doesn't say what exactly, but something was returned to me. Therefore now, I Nebuchadnezzar, I wish to give praise unto the King of heaven. That everything He does with beauty. And God performs justice. And finally, anybody who is arrogant, God will bring that person down. That's the end of the story. How was Nebuchadnezzar different than other dictators? Can anybody imagine that President Xi, Teshuvah, right. But can you imagine President Xi making Teshuvah, Putin making Teshuvah, any of these African monarchs making Teshuvah? You can't. Why not? Stalin making Teshuvah, Tojo making Teshuvah, Mussolini making Teshuvah? No. And I think the answer is obvious and simple. I think the answer is obvious. That Daniel, he was in the presence of that. That's the answer. The answer is, this was the power of Daniel. Daniel was so eloquent and beautiful in his words and so brilliant in his mind that he had an influence even upon the most brutal dictator. This was a dictator just like any other dictator, right? And yet, because Daniel's words were in his mind, at that moment of illumination, he suddenly realized, yeah, I'm not omnipotent, and I acknowledge that there is a God above me. And he sends this letter, or he doesn't send the letter to the kingdom. He wrote the letter. What happened to the letter, we don't know, other than Daniel was so moved by the letter that he decided to include it in the book, with Ruach HaKodesh, of course. And here we are reading this letter. So the transformation of a dictator, he was a dictator, he's transformed into an animal, metamorphosis, but then, because he made teshuvah, as Mikey said, he once again returns to the kingdom with a little more humility, and God apparently let him live out his life. However, but you know that Babylonia fell after this. Babylonia was replaced by the Persian Median Empire. That's another story. We're not going to be reading it this year because we're studying Gemara next week, but that eventually leads to Ahashverosh. Ahashverosh is from the Babylonian from the Persian Median Empire. That's Ahashverosh. That maybe we'll do next year, we'll see. רבי חנניה בן הקשיא אומר, ורצה הקדוש ברוך הוא לזכות את ישראל, לפיך התבע להם תורה מצוות, שנאמר, אדוני חפש סימן צדקו